All right, Barbara. Well, I know we've been talking about kind of some of your feelings of sadness and not feeling quite yourself lately. And what I'd like for us to do today is to look at some of these feelings a little more closely, look at them in a little more detail, and complete something called the three-column thought record. And so what I'd like for you to do is to think of a situation in the recent past, maybe in the last week, where you noticed that you were feeling some of these negative feelings pretty strongly. And what we're going to do is kind of go through and look at some of the thoughts that you're having in these moments, and then also look at the feelings that seem to stem from some of these thoughts. So can you think of a recent situation, maybe in the past week, where you noticed you were feeling kind of down?
Yes, I can, Dr. Holland. Yes, I can. I actually thought this would make me feel better, and it seemed to go the other way.
Okay.
So I got out our photo albums. I always kept good photo albums for the family, places we've been, and then there was my husband in almost all the pictures, and I thought it would make me feel good.
Yeah.
But actually, I wound up, of course I miss him terribly, even though it's been 3 years, but I still miss him terribly.
It was really tough looking at this photo album. Let's start writing some of this down, because I don't want to miss this, and it seems really important. So I think this is a good place to start. And so let's write in terms of a situation, looking at the photo album.
Now, it takes me a while to write on account of my arthritis.
Okay.
So
yeah, take your time.
But I should write anyway.
I'd give it a shot, and if you're in too much pain, let me know. Okay.
Okay. So I should put looking at photo albums.
Photo albums, and kind of thinking back to the past. Is that
okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
And I know you started to go into some of the thoughts that you were having. You said, "I miss them."
Yeah. Well, life just isn't the same anymore. There's no two ways about it.
Life isn't the same.
No.
Yeah. Let's write that down too. Life isn't the same.
Well, we were going to go, we had this plan that after the kids left home, we were going to go visit all the national parks in this country.
Yeah.
And we almost did it, We only missed like about 5 or 6, and now I don't want to go to those places.
Yeah. All these plans, all these things that you guys were going to do.
Yeah, they're just gone. They're just gone, and I don't have much purpose to my life anymore.
Yeah. Let's write that down. I don't feel like I have much purpose. I don't have any purpose. And what kind of feelings come up as you're carrying around some of these very heavy thoughts, like I don't have any purpose, life isn't going to be the same?
I'm very sad.
Okay.
I'm very sad, really.
Good. And I see you're already writing that in that third column. I feel sad.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, I think I'm still depressed about this, because I moved here. Joe and I, we had this great house in Nevada, and then the housing thing just fell apart, and after he died, I couldn't keep it up anymore.
Okay.
So I had to move. I knew I had to move.
So that's a big part of what brought you here.
Yeah. Well, I thought being with my daughter, my eldest daughter, I thought that would be really good. She's got 2 kids, and so I could be more of a grandmother to them than I could from Nevada if I was living here near them, But now they don't seem to want me.
Let's write that down. They don't want me.
This is difficult, writing these things down,
Yeah. I imagine this is hard, and I think you're doing a good job. I think this is going to be helpful for you.
Well, how is it going to be helpful?
Well, I think a lot of times some of these thoughts that we have, sometimes they're so automatic and they happen so quickly that it's difficult to really get a handle on them. But if we don't recognize them, then it's difficult to do anything to change the way that we're thinking about it or to look at it a different way. And so I think the first step of this is just getting it all down on paper. So right now we're not really focusing on changing anything, but just identifying what is it that's going on. And I think that's the first step, and I know it's tough. This is probably the hardest part.
But eventually we're going to try to change these thoughts.
There is hope, yeah. And so, what we're going to do after we've identified some of these and we really both have a good picture of what's going on, then I do have some ideas of things we might be able to try to start looking at this in a little bit of a different way. Yeah.
Well, as I think about this now that we're talking about it, I think I'm also kind of angry with my daughter.
Angry.
I think I'm angry with her.
Okay, let's write that down in the third column, angry,
okay. Yeah, because, after all, I was there for her and her brothers and sisters, I sacrificed a lot for these kids, and they really, I think she should be there for me now.
Let's write that down. I was there for them. They should be there for me now.
Yeah, well, I do think that. I think that's only fair.
Yeah. And is that kind of, that thought, is that where some of the anger stems from?
Yes, yes. It's not fair. It's not fair. After all I've done, it's not fair.
Let's write that down too, because it sounds like that's a really strong thought.
I did.
This is not fair. Okay.
I wrote it down.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know, but maybe they don't want me because, one reason is because I'm slow now. I'm in my 70s. I can't run after the grandkids. If I had lived here sooner when they were littler, maybe I could have done more. But
it's harder to get around now.
Yeah, it is, and she doesn't understand that. She doesn't understand my arthritis, and that some days I have good days, and then I have bad days. They're always busy all the time, and I can't keep up with them all the time.
Yeah, so let's write that down. She doesn't understand about your arthritis.
I don't think so, no.
And it sounds
that's
like,
how I feel, that she's just kind of, blows me off. Maybe I'm just too much trouble.
Okay, let's write that down. I'm too much trouble. And how does that feel to have this thought swirling around in your head? I'm too much trouble.
Oh, it makes me even more depressed.
Okay, so let's write that in that third column then. Even more.
I'm not just sad anymore when it comes to that, then I'm depressed.
Right, then it's just full blown, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
So I think we have a pretty good list here, Barbara, and what I'd like to do now is to talk about how we might practice some of this at home during the week. And so what I'd like you to try to do is to fill out this 3-column thought record during the week, and to try to do one every day if you can.
Every day?
Yeah.
Oh, no, doctor. I think that's going to be too much. I am, I don't want to keep just being depressed all the time, and this makes me feel, down. And no, I think every day is too much.
Feels kind of overwhelming to do it every day. What feels more realistic to you then?
Well, I don't know, maybe twice. Would that be okay if I filled in a couple of these?
I think that's a good start, yeah. And so maybe from now until next week, you'll try to fill this out twice when you notice that you're feeling down or that you're feeling something pretty powerfully. Add another element to this that we didn't cover today. But when you're going through some of these thoughts, I'd like you to think about, how strongly do I really believe this? And if possible, to try to almost put a number on that, from 0 to 100%. How strongly do I really believe this is true? And then when you're thinking about some of the feelings that are stemming from those thoughts, to also rate how strongly am I feeling this emotion right now? So if you're feeling sad, how strongly am I feeling sadness right now? From 0 to 100 again.
Well, I noticed that it does say that on the form, so I wondered about that. So, okay, I can try that, because, yeah, some of these thoughts are stronger than others, definitely.
Right, and I think that would be helpful information for us to have. So how confident do you feel right now that you're going to be able to fill out 2 of these from now until next week? And then maybe let's try to put a number on that, say from 0 to 100. How confident do you feel?
Maybe 75%.
Okay. So
I think I can do it.
You think you can do it?
Yeah, I think I can do it.
Sounds like there's a little bit of doubt, though, or some skepticism that maybe you won't. Is there some barriers that you're already anticipating?
Well, that I might get so sad, and so depressed that it makes, I don't know, it just defeats the purpose of it, that I can't really learn from it, but instead I'm just getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So what should I do then?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that right now, because I think that's an important thing to think about ahead of time, is that maybe I'm going to get really sad when I fill this out, and that's going to make me not want to fill it out anymore, right? So I wonder, let's kind of problem solve about that together. What do you think you might be able to do in those moments if you start to feel sad, to maybe lift your spirits a little bit, or to manage some of those negative feelings?
Well, I suppose I could call my friend. I could call Mabel. She's really my best friend from when we lived in Nevada. We did a lot of things with her and her husband together, and she really, she and I like each other. We understand each other, and I think I could tell her if I'm feeling really bad. She'd come up with something that would make me feel a little better.
Yeah, Mabel's really a great source of support for you, and I remember that you had identified that earlier when we were filling out those lists of pleasant activities for you, of calling Mabel. That was something you really enjoyed.
Yes, I remember that too.
Yeah. And so I would encourage you even to pick up that list again and look at some of those things, maybe, calling Mabel, and maybe other things on the list that you find pleasurable, because I think that could be a good way of handling some of these situations if you do notice that you're feeling pretty sad when you're filling this out. How does that sound to you?
Well, it's good to have some options,
Yeah. To have some
Okay.
plan.
I guess that sounds okay. I'm willing to do it.
Okay, you willing to give this a try? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, and I think that this is going to be helpful, and when you bring this in next week, what I'd like for us to do is kind of do some exercises together to look at how we might look at some of these situations that you encountered during the week a little bit differently, and then notice maybe how that changes your feelings too about those situations.
Okay, so there's a reason why you want me to do these things.
Yeah.
It's not just to write them down.
Yeah. We're actually gonna do some things with this, and I think it's going to help you to take the edge off some of these negative feelings a little bit.
Well, it helps me to understand that. So okay, good.
Okay, great. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay.
I see, Barbara, you brought in some home practice from this past week.
Yes, I did the 2 on the diaries, the thought diaries, like you asked me to.
Yeah.
I did 2 of them, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. I actually thought, I did call Mabel once,
Okay.
and that was a good idea, because she
Great.
really helped me to, to be thinking about how, yes, life isn't the same without my husband, of course, but there probably are some things that make life worth living.
So Mabel even helped you look at this in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, friends can be really helpful in that way sometimes. I think that's great.
It was good.
So
It was okay.
let me take a look at what you've been doing over this past week, so I can get a sense for what's been going on. Okay. Yeah, and as I'm just sort of scanning this preliminarily, I'm already seeing that there's quite a few parallels between some of the things that were coming up this past week and some of the themes that came out during our in-session practice last week.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's true. I
Yeah.
noticed that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, and I'm really interested to see, where do we go with this now? What do we do now?
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about some of these patterns that we're noticing kind of with your thinking. Do you remember kind of those 10 different ways in which our thinking can kind of be biased, or our thinking can kind of go wrong sometimes? Okay.
I don't remember
Okay,
that.
well, I've got a list here, right here, of some of the ways in which our thinking can kind of run amok sometimes, and I see a few of these things going on in some of the thoughts that you've brought in. In particular, sometimes it seems like there's a lot of focus on the negatives, a lot of focus on the negative things that are going on, and my guess would be that that's not the whole picture. And that there's
so that's this one here, maybe?
yeah, that would be this one here of kind of
Okay.
discounting the positives, focusing on the negatives. And so do you see that at all?
Well, I didn't used to be this way, I used to be a much more, kind of happy-go-lucky person. So, but I guess the last few years, yeah, I would say that's true. I do tend to focus on the negative, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that fits for you. Another thing that I noticed too is that sometimes there is this theme of this just feels so unfair. It's almost like life shouldn't be this way,
Absolutely.
I shouldn't be dealing with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's this one here?
This tyranny of the shoulds. Yeah.
Well, I've
Focusing.
got a lot of them. I've got a lot
Yeah.
of them, Doctor, yeah.
Yeah. And so I definitely see that. And I also see a little bit of kind of thinking in extremes sometimes too, like life is never going to have purpose again. Life doesn't have any purpose. And it almost starts to feel a little maybe like this sort of all or none, kind of black and white kind of way of looking at the world. Does that fit for you at all, or do you see that? Fill these out?
Well, I guess so. That one seems a little bit less, seems to fit a little bit less for me,
Okay.
but I can see how I definitely think more along these lines than I used to.
Right.
And probably more than Mabel and some of my other friends. They don't think along these lines. I'm pretty sure of that. So
Right. And so you've noticed some differences in the way that you're thinking these days versus how you used to think, and some recognition that this does seem a little more extreme than maybe it used to
yes.
be. Okay. What I'd like for us to do now is to practice some techniques that hopefully can help you to begin to maybe look at this from a different angle, or look at some of these thoughts from a different angle. And I'd like to maybe start with this thought that you identified of life doesn't have purpose anymore.
Yeah, because that one came up again, during the week when I was doing the homework. I don't see any purpose, let's put it that way.
Right. And so right now it really feels like that's pretty true. And so what I'd like to do is to try a technique called examining the evidence, okay? And we're going to go back and really, almost like we're a scientist or something, looking at the evidence for how true is it really that life doesn't have any purpose anymore. And maybe as a starting place we could look and see if there's any evidence to the contrary, or are there any experiences that you can think of, or anything that you do, or relationships that you have that give your life even a little bit of purpose?
Well, I suppose I have some purpose, yeah. I mean, I do want to help raise my grandkids.
Yeah.
I mean, their parents, they're just busy all the time. They both work. They don't really spend a lot of time with these kids. They're teenagers now, and they need some guidance.
Right.
So
I could really have play a pretty important role in their lives.
I think I could if I could, if they would want me, if they would just have me around more often. I think I could have some purpose there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so even though there's some disappointment that I'm not able to spend the kind of time I'd like to with them, there's also this sense that I could really make a difference in their lives, and I want to do that. That would give me some sense of meaning. Yeah.
It would, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd like to try yet another thing. So it does sound like, in looking at this, it's not entirely true that life doesn't have any purpose. I'm sure that life feels less purposeful now that Joe isn't around. But it does seem like there are some things that give your life some purpose. And so sometimes it's helpful in these instances to think along a continuum, to look at kind of the in-betweens, and that maybe it's true that life doesn't have the same purpose and meaning that it once did, but at the same time it may not be entirely true that life doesn't have any purpose. And I wonder, is there some in-between there?
Yeah, I think I get your point there, that it's not so black and white, that maybe, yeah, I guess I have some purpose.
Okay, let's write that down in this develop adaptive responses, this column D. I'd like you to write that down, that life has some purpose. Maybe it doesn't have the purpose it once did, but there are things that give me some purpose, and particularly you identified helping to raise your grandkids as one thing.
Well, I'm going to put that down too, because when I get depressed, when I'm feeling worse, I forget that, you know.
Right, right.
So, okay.
And I wonder...
I mean, that helps, I suppose. But, you know, there is this problem with that, because, like I said the last time, you know, they don't seem to really want me, you know. I think they should want more of my time.
Yeah, and I want to focus on that too, and I think that's maybe the next thought that we're going to move on to. But before we just kind of gloss over this, what I'd like to do is to focus a little bit more on this new thought that you just had. And I'm wondering, as you kind of consider some of this alternate kind of evidence, and you think about some of the purpose that you do still have in life, does that bring up any new feelings for you? What does that feel like to consider that?
Well, actually, a little more optimistic.
Okay, let's write that down in this column E here, which is kind of new feelings that emerge. I feel a little more optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and a little more like, I've got something to offer. I do have something to offer. I just need to find the right way, you know, to
So
get it
almost
across.
like a little hopeful, maybe it almost sounds like. Like I do have something to offer.
Yeah.
I can do something.
Yeah.
And what about, you know, I know that before, when you were having the feelings of not feeling like you had a lot of purpose, there was sadness attached to that. Where's that sadness now that you're kind of thinking more about some of these alternate pieces of evidence?
Well, at least for the moment here, I feel less sad.
A little less sad.
Yeah.
It'll take some of the edge off. Let's write that down too. So still some sadness. It didn't take it all away.
No.
Yeah.
Because I have to really make this happen, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't going to be that meaningful until I really am more engaged with raising my grandkids.
Yeah. And so I think that might even lead us directly into this last column, which is, you know, what might I do differently, you know, now that I've kind of thought about all these things. And it sounds like one thing you're saying is, maybe this really makes me want to be more involved, you know, that would be something, because that is something that I really derive a lot of meaning from.
Yeah, well, I see it says here, what would you do differently, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe, I guess what this makes me think about is I should reach out more, you know? It'd be better, maybe I need to reach out more. Maybe I'm waiting too much for them to come to me, and, you know, maybe I need to reach out to them a little more.
Yeah, I think that's great. Let's write that down. Maybe this would encourage me to reach out a little bit more, play a little bit more of an active role, and be less passive, maybe. Okay, that's great. And so I think this is a good start. This is a really good start, and we're going to continue to work with some of these same thoughts. Let's move on to, because I know that you were talking earlier about how this feeling like, but I feel like they don't want me anymore. So let's move on to that, because I also think that that seems to be a pretty dominant thing that keeps coming up.
Well, yeah, and it certainly goes with what I've just said, because even if I reach out, but they don't want me, then it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to do about that. They don't want me. I don't have any control over that.
Okay, okay. Well, let's do something similar here and look at some of the evidence, both for and against that. This idea that they don't want me anymore. Yeah.
Well, maybe a better way to put it is they want me on their terms.
They want me on their terms.
Right. When it's convenient,
So there are some times where it feels like maybe they do want you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there are some times, but it's not spontaneous. What I would like is to be able to just go over there, on a Monday night or Tuesday night or something, and help the girls with their homework, and just kind of feel like I can go in and out when I want to. And now I have to practically make an appointment to see them.
Yeah, you'd really like to be able to pop in and feel like you're more a part of things, but it sounds like they have a different idea of how that should work, right?
Yeah, because everything's scheduled.
Yeah.
And so I have to fit their schedule.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like they don't want me because their schedule's more important. So, soccer practice and then this and then that. And
right. And I can certainly see how that's disappointing, to feel like I'm not able to go over when I want to go over. And so I hear the disappointment, and I hear that you'd like for this to be different, but I'm also hearing that there are some times when it does fit a little bit more with how they think things should work, where maybe you do feel like they do want me to be here. Is that true, or is there any truth to that?
I mean, one of the girls, Melody, she was in the school play, and they definitely wanted me to come to the school play and see Melody.
So it felt like it meant a lot to them that you were there to be there for that big moment.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, it did. Yeah. So I mean, that was good, but.
Yeah.
But, most of the time, maybe I would revise this a bit and say most of the time they don't want me. They don't seem to want me.
Okay. Well, let's write that down then. And in this develop alternate responses, that maybe often it seems like they don't want me, but sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
Yeah, but am I supposed to be satisfied with that?
Well, I think that's something for us to continue to talk about. But I think for now, this is a good start in that we're beginning to kind of shift a little bit and look at this differently from where you were at last week. And so one thing I'm interested to find out is taking this shift,
it is
albeit maybe a smaller shift, does that bring up any new feelings for you?
Well, I don't know, maybe a less angry.
Okay.
I'm still kind of angry. I still
angry.
think, they should be thinking about me too and some of my needs, and not just everything focused on the girls.
Yeah, and so it sounds like there's a little bit of a bite that's kind of been taken out of this anger. One thing I do want you to pay attention to is I hear this language of should. And I think that's something to pay attention to in your language.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that one, Doctor, because I do think they should be here for me now.
Right.
I do think that it's not fair the way they kind of pigeonhole me into these little spots where it's convenient.
So I think this is definitely something that we should keep talking about, this idea of it really should be different. But I think the important thing that came out of today is I think there is some appreciation for the fact that I have a certain set of expectations, they have a certain set of expectations, and those aren't quite matching up right now.
No, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
That is a good way to put it. Yes, I never thought of it that way. I do have expectations. Maybe I've never even said them before, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm more aware of them now.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe we could write that down too, actually, as another thought about maybe we just have different expectations.
I do believe that that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I suppose, they don't want to be stuck with an old lady all the time. So that's that's the other thing about, maybe I'm just too much trouble for them, and they just, they go at this rapid pace all the time, and I really can't do that anymore.
Yeah, because I remember that also being something that came out last week, which was I just feel like maybe I'm too much trouble for them, and that's another piece of this.
I don't really know if that's the case.
Yeah.
I've never really talked to my daughter about that.
Right.
So
right.
I don't really know if that's what she thinks.
Well, I'd like you to try something, a technique called role reversal, okay? And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to imagine that, let's say your daughter is ill or she's been injured and she's having a lot of trouble getting around. And let's say you're healthy and she's sitting here saying to you, Mom, I think I'm just too much trouble for you. You don't want to have to worry about me. I'm so much trouble.
Yeah.
What would you say to her, do you think, if she was sitting here saying that to you?
Well, I mean, no, you're not too much trouble. I mean, you're my daughter. You know, of course I'm going to take care of you.
Yeah, your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely give her compassion, and in fact, she was in a car accident, when she was in her 20s, and I gave a lot of help then.
Yeah, it's like we're family. We take care of each other. That's what family does.
Yeah, yes.
Let's write that down. I'd like you to write that down.
Okay.
They're family.
I don't know
Family.
if that's what she thinks, though.
Yeah. Yeah. What does it feel like to try to say some of those things to yourself? To consider the possibility that maybe they're family, and that's what family does, is family takes care of each other.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. I just don't know if she thinks that way.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure that's true.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
there's a little skepticism about, does she really feel that way?
Right.
Do you think it's possible she might feel that way?
I do. I mean, underneath it all, I think it's possible. Yes.
possible.
I mean,
Okay.
we raised her with, some good values, I think. I mean, she's a caring person.
Okay.
I guess it's possible.
Okay. So considering that possibility, does that bring up any feelings for you? Any new feelings?
Well, I don't know if this is a feeling, but, maybe I'm being too hard on her. Maybe I'm misjudging. So I guess I need to check it out more.
Okay.
Wow.
So let's actually write this down in the last column. Maybe I need to check this out and get some more information.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe talk to her about it. And in terms of a feeling, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm almost hearing like a little bit of more compassion, maybe. Yeah, like...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit.
little bit?
All right. I can see that.
Maybe
yes.
compassion for what they're going through. And,
Yes. Yes. I mean, if I do put myself in her shoes for a minute, in my imagination, like just try to think about her life, it's stressful. It's
Yeah.
hard. She is busy all the time.
She's got a lot on her shoulders. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that does give me a little different take on the situation.
Any compassion for yourself in thinking about that? In thinking about this possibility that maybe family takes care of each other and maybe that's what they do. And if my daughter were in this situation, I'd feel that way.
Well, yeah, I guess a little.
A little?
Yeah,
Okay.
a
But that's
little.
harder.
Yeah.
Okay.
that might be one we'll have to keep working on.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think that's what this is it's a start. And I think we are going to keep working on these things. But I think for today, what I wanted us to do was just to begin to maybe shift some of these thoughts a little bit. And I think what we noticed is that the feelings change. They don't disappear, but some of the sadness is lessened. Some of the anger, the bite is kind of taken out of it. And there's some new feelings that emerged too, right? I feel a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more optimistic. Yeah.
Well, and I like, too, the idea that now there's a couple of things that maybe I could do. You know, I could reach out more to them.
Right.
Be less passive. You know, I mean, that's good.
Right.
I like that idea that there's action that I could take that would maybe impact on the situation.
Right, and so we're actually beginning, too, to kind of formulate an action plan of, you know, how might this, you know, change what I do, and maybe that's going to positively influence some of these situations too. And so I want to keep talking about this, and so let's continue to work on this and continue to look at how we might be able to shift our thinking a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.